What if I told you that some of the most productive food plants on Earth aren't towering apple trees or sprawling peach orchards? They're knee-high shrubs you could plant in a weekend, forget about for a season, and come back to find absolutely loaded with fruit. Plants that homesteaders have been quietly growing for generations. Plants that produce so much food in so little space that fruit trees look embarrassing by comparison. Most people don't know this, but while everyone's out there planting apple trees and waiting 7 years for their first harvest, there are berry bushes that start producing in their second year, double their yield every season, and just keep going, decade after decade, with almost zero attention. And today, I'm going to show you 20 of them that will completely change the way you think about food production forever. Stick around, because number 7 on this list can produce 12 to 15 pounds of berries from a single bush every single year. And number 20 is a superfruit shrub that scientists are calling one of the most antioxidant-dense foods ever discovered, and you can grow it in your backyard right now. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, because we post new videos every week that'll help you grow more food, save more money, and build the kind of self-sufficient homestead that most people only dream about. So let's get into it. Here are 20 tiny bushes that produce 10 times more food than fruit trees, ranked from impressive to absolutely incredible. Number 1, Aronia, chokeberry, the overlooked powerhouse. Let's start with Aronia, also called chokeberry. And this dark-berried shrub has one of the most underrated productivity records in the entire fruit-growing world. Aronia melanocarpa grows as a compact, multi-stemmed shrub that most people wouldn't even glance at twice in a nursery. It doesn't have flashy flowers. It doesn't have exotic leaves. It just quietly loads itself down with dense clusters of deep purple-black berries every single fall, year after year, with almost no care required. Here's what makes Aronia remarkable. A single mature shrub can produce 15 to 20 pounds of berries annually. Compare that to a dwarf apple tree that might give you 20 pounds on a great year, after waiting 5 to 7 years to mature, while the Aronia is already producing heavily in year 2 or 3. The berries aren't sweet-eaten fresh, they're intensely astringent, which is exactly why they've been used for centuries in juices, jams, syrups, and wine. That astringency comes from extraordinarily high levels of anthocyanins and polyphenols. The juice blends beautifully with sweeter fruits. The jam is incredible, and the dried berries are showing up in smoothie powders and health supplements everywhere right now. Modern agricultural research has confirmed what Eastern European farmers have known for generations. Aronia is one of the highest yielding, lowest maintenance berry shrubs that exists. It tolerates wet soil, drought, poor soil, clay, and neglect. It has virtually no pest or disease problems. It doesn't need pruning, spraying, or babying. Aronia disappeared from Western gardens simply because nobody marketed it. But for anyone serious about maximum food production from minimum space, Aronia belongs in your yard. Think of it as the shrub that never calls in sick, never asks for help, and delivers every single harvest like clockwork. Number 2, Honeyberry, hascap. The first fruit of spring. Honeyberry might be the most exciting discovery in backyard food growing in the last 20 years. This cold-hardy superberry, also called hascap, does something almost no other fruit plant can do. It produces ripe fruit in mid to late spring, weeks before any other berry is even thinking about flowering. Loganberry caerulea is native to Siberia, northern Japan, and Canada's boreal forests. It evolved to fruit in the coldest, harshest climates on Earth, and that means it's essentially bulletproof in most of North America. Hard freezes that destroy strawberry blossoms, honeyberries shrug them off, late spring frosts that wipe out blueberry flowers. Honeyberries keep going. A mature honeyberry bush after 3 to 4 years can produce around 10 pounds of berries per plant per season. And here's the thing, you need at least 2 different varieties for good pollination, and when you plant them in groups, those yields compound. 3 honeyberry bushes in the space a single apple tree would need, producing 25 to 30 pounds of fruit in May, when nothing else is ripe. The berries taste like a cross between a blueberry and a wild grape. Complex, slightly tart, deeply flavored. They're extraordinary for eating fresh, making jam, baking into pies, or fermenting. The deep blue color stains everything beautifully and signals the same kind of anthocyanin richness that makes blueberries so famous. Honeyberry got overlooked in the West simply because it came from places that most Western growers didn't look: Siberian villages, Japanese mountainsides, Canadian indigenous communities. But once you grow it, you'll wonder how you ever considered a fruit garden without it. It's the shrub that delivers Christmas in May. Number 3, blackcurrant, the household fruit factory. Blackcurrant is where productivity numbers stop being impressive and start being almost unbelievable. A single mature ribes nigrum plant, a shrub you can walk past in a stride, can supply an entire household's fruit needs for jams, juices, and preserves. Not a family's supplemental fruit, an entire household's supply. The numbers are staggering. A well-grown blackcurrant in its prime can yield 10 to 15 pounds of berries per bush per year. In ideal conditions with good care, exceptional plants can hit 20 pounds, all from a shrub that takes up roughly 4 feet of garden space. Blackcurrant was the backbone of British wartime nutrition during World War II. When citrus imports collapsed, the British government promoted blackcurrant growing nationwide because the berries are extraordinarily rich in vitamin C, containing 4 times more per serving than oranges. That government-sponsored cultivation is why Ribena, the blackcurrant cordial, became a British institution. The berries are intensely flavored, earthy, tart, and deeply aromatic. That strong flavor means a little goes a long way. 1 cup of blackcurrant juice concentrate makes drinks for days. 1 pound of berries makes enough jam to last a month for most families. Blackcurrant disappeared from American gardens for a strange reason. Federal and state regulations in the early 1900s banned currant growing in many states because the plant is an alternate host for white pine blister rust. Many of those bans have since been lifted, but the cultural memory of growing currants was lost. That ban essentially erased a generation of currant growers, and nobody taught the next generation. But blackcurrant is coming back, and once you taste what a single shrub can produce, you'll understand why it fed empires. Think of it as the fruit factory that fits in a flower bed. Number 4, red currant, the cascade of jewels. If blackcurrant is the workhorse, red currant is the show-off, and it earns every bit of that reputation. Ribes rubrum produces cascading clusters of translucent red berries, so densely packed that by midsummer, you can barely see the leaves through the fruit. The plant looks like it's wearing jewelry, and the production numbers match the display. A mature red currant bush produces 8 to 12 pounds of berries per season, all hanging in those spectacular strigs, the long grape-like clusters that make harvesting almost meditative. You strip an entire cluster in one motion and drop it in the bucket. Red currant has been a staple of European kitchen gardens for centuries, particularly in Germany, Scandinavia, and the Netherlands, where it's used to make red currant jelly, summer pudding, and the classic sauce for game meats. The berries are tart and bright, with a flavor that cuts through rich foods beautifully. Here's what makes red currant special for the productive garden. It tolerates partial shade better than almost any other fruiting shrub. The north side of a fence, the shadowy corner under an overhang, places where nothing else will produce, red currant still delivers. It fills the dead zones of your garden with food. Red currant got overlooked in America for the same regulatory history as blackcurrant, but it's one of the most visually stunning and productively reliable shrubs you can plant. Think of it as the plant that turns your dead corners into fruit displays. Number 5, gooseberry, the zero attention champion. Gooseberry might be the single best argument for growing berry bushes instead of fruit trees. A homesteader in our community said it perfectly. Gooseberries are my biggest yield for zero attention, and she's right. Ribes uva crispa is one of the most compact, productive, and self-sufficient shrubs in existence. It doesn't need much pruning. It doesn't need spraying. It doesn't need irrigating once established. It just sits there in its thorny little cluster and produces enormous quantities of large, plump berries every summer, as if it has something to prove. A mature gooseberry bush produces 8 to 10 pounds of fruit per season from a plant that takes up barely 3 feet of space. In good conditions, exceptional plants can hit 15 pounds. And unlike finicky fruits that demand perfect soil and constant attention, gooseberry tolerates poor soil, heavy clay, partial shade, and general neglect with total indifference. The berries range from tart green varieties that are perfect for cooking and jam to sweet dessert varieties that you can eat by the handful straight from the bush. Gooseberry Fool, The Old English dessert of cooked gooseberries folded into cream is one of the great unsung pleasures of summer eating. Gooseberry was once incredibly popular in Britain, where entire cottage garden competitions were held for the largest berry. Specimens the size of a small plum were cultivated. But in America, gooseberries sharing the same regulatory history as currants got quietly forgotten. That regulatory amnesia cost American gardens one of their best producers. But the bans are mostly lifted, the plants are available, and the yields are waiting. Think of gooseberry as the shrub that took low maintenance personally. Number 6. Jostaberry, the best of both worlds. What happens when you cross a gooseberry with a black currant? You get the Jostaberry, and you get one of the most productive, most disease-resistant, and most overlooked berry shrubs in existence. Ribes cross nidigrolaria was developed by German plant breeders in the 1970s, combining the large berry size and productivity of gooseberry with the rich flavor and vitamin content of black currant. And the hybrid vigor that comes from that cross is extraordinary. Jostaberry grows bigger and more vigorously than either parent, produces more reliably, and has essentially no disease problems. A mature Jostaberry bush produces 10 to 15 pounds of dark purple-black berries per season. The berries are larger than black currants, slightly tart but genuinely pleasant fresh, and extraordinary for jams and juice. They have the depth of black currant flavor, with less of the intense muskiness that some people find overwhelming. Here's the practical advantage. Jostaberry has no thorns. Gooseberries are notoriously thorny, and harvesting them can feel like a battle. Jostaberry gives you all that gooseberry level productivity without the scratched arms. And unlike black currant, it doesn't carry the same disease concerns for white pine, making it legal to grow in more places. Jostaberry got forgotten simply because it's a new hybrid and nobody promoted it. It doesn't have centuries of cultural tradition behind it, but any gardener who grows it quickly becomes an evangelist. The combination of yield, flavor, and zero maintenance production is hard to beat. It's the shrub that got the best of both parents and none of the problems. Number 7. Elderberry, the medicine cabinet with berries. Now we're getting into the really powerful ones. Elderberry. A mature Sambucus nigra bush can produce 12 to 15 pounds of berries annually, and that's from a plant that in ideal conditions isn't really a bush anymore. It's a small tree, but grown and pruned as a shrub, it fits in any garden and still delivers those numbers. Elderberry has been a keystone plant for human communities for thousands of years. The flowers make elderflower cordial, one of the most beloved flavors in European food culture. The berries make elderberry syrup, wine, jam, and the immune-supporting tonic that every herb-minded household keeps stocked through winter. Even the bark, leaves, and roots have traditional medicinal applications. Modern research has confirmed that elderberry has genuine immune-stimulating properties. Clinical studies show elderberry extract reduces the duration and severity of colds and flu. The berries are rich in flavonoids, especially quercetin and rutin, that have antioxidant and antiviral effects. This isn't wishful thinking, it's published science. Here's what makes elderberry exceptional for the productive garden. It grows fast, extraordinarily fast. A cutting planted in spring can be a 6-foot shrub by fall. In 3 years, you have a massive, heavily producing plant that also provides shelter for birds, habitat for pollinators, and one of the most versatile harvests in the food garden. Elderberry grows wild across North America and Europe. It's adapted. It's tough. It tolerates wet soil and semi-shade, and it produces reliably year after year. For anyone building a food forest or productive homestead garden, elderberry is one of the first plants to go in. Think of it as the shrub that feeds you, heals you, and houses your local wildlife simultaneously. Number 8. Blueberry, the long game champion. Blueberry is the one most people know, but most people massively underestimate what a mature, well-established blueberry bush actually produces. Depending on variety, a single Vaccinium corymbosum plant can yield anywhere from 6 to 44 pounds of berries per season, per plant, from a shrub. That 44-pound upper end isn't a fantasy. It's what mature, well-pruned, high-bush blueberries in ideal conditions actually produce. The reason most gardeners never see yields like that is simple. Blueberries are slow starters that reward patience and punish impatience. Here's the truth about blueberries. Year 1, you get nothing. Year 2, a handful. Year 3, a promising crop. Year 5, real production begins. Year 10, those bushes are machines. Year 25, they're still going. Blueberries are one of the longest-lived productive plants you can grow. Properly tended bushes produce for 50 years or more. The other critical thing most people get wrong: blueberries need acidic soil, pH 4.5 to 5.5, and they need at least 2 varieties for cross-pollination. Get those 2 things right, and everything else is easy. Get them wrong, and you'll wonder why your blueberries are struggling. What makes blueberry exceptional in the long-term productive garden isn't just the yield, it's the reliability. Once established in the right conditions, blueberries produce year after year with minimal intervention. They're one of the cleanest, lowest spray crops you can grow. Pests exist, but they're manageable. The fruit is universally loved, extraordinarily nutritious, and incredibly versatile. Blueberries got forgotten as a garden crop because everyone went to the grocery store instead. But the difference between a store-bought blueberry and a sun-warmed berry picked ripe from your own bush is so dramatic, it's practically a different fruit. Think of blueberry as the retirement plan of your food garden. Plant it now, get paid for decades. Number 9, raspberry, the multiplying machine. Raspberry is the shrub that doesn't just produce fruit, it multiplies itself. Plant 3 raspberry canes today, and by year 3, you have 30. By year 5, you have 100, if you let them run. Rubus idaeus is the closest thing to a self-replicating food factory that you can put in a garden. A single productive raspberry cane produces a modest amount, but that's never how you grow raspberries. You grow them as a patch, and a well-managed raspberry patch of 20 plants produces 20 to 30 pounds of fruit per season, from a space 12 feet long by 2 feet wide. The square footage to yield ratio is extraordinary. Raspberries come in summer-bearing and fall-bearing varieties. Summer types fruit on 2-year-old canes in June and July. Fall-bearing types, everbearers, fruit on new canes in late summer and fall. Growing both types gives you fresh raspberries from June through October, with nothing more complicated than basic pruning to keep them managed. The berries are extraordinarily delicate, which is exactly why the ones in grocery stores are always disappointing. Supermarket raspberries are picked slightly underripe to survive shipping. A ripe, sun-warmed raspberry picked at its peak and eaten immediately is one of the genuine transcendent food experiences available to home growers. The flavor concentration is simply incomparable. Raspberry got somewhat forgotten as a garden crop simply because the grocery store made them available year-round. But what the store sells as raspberries is a pale shadow of what your garden produces. Once you grow your own, you'll never buy them again. Think of raspberry as the plant that expands to meet your appetite. Number 10, blackberry, the effortless abundance. Blackberry is what happens when productivity stops being polite about it. Rubus allegheniensis and its cultivated relatives will produce 10 to 20 pounds of fruit per plant per season from a shrub that in the right conditions you almost have to fight to keep contained. Wild blackberries colonize roadsides, forest edges, and abandoned lots with aggressive enthusiasm. Cultivated thornless varieties bring that same productivity into the controlled garden without the battle of thorns at harvest. And the flavors of a good cultivated blackberry, Chester, Triple Crown, Arapaho, far exceed anything the wild species produces. Here's what makes blackberry exceptional for the food-first garden. It produces in the hungry gap of midsummer, after strawberries are done, and before most fall fruits arrive. That July-August production window fills the table when other berries are taking a break. The berries freeze extraordinarily well. A good blackberry harvest in July can fill a chest freezer with fruit that lasts all winter for smoothies, jams, cobblers, and sauces. A couple of productive plants creates a surplus that goes well beyond what most families can eat fresh. Blackberry does need management. It will spread if you let it, but managed correctly as a trellis or hedge, it's one of the highest return plantings you can make. The infrastructure is simple: a post, some wire, and annual pruning. The yields repay that small investment many times over. Think of blackberry as the plant that rewards anyone willing to give it 5 minutes of attention a year. Number 11, Loganberry, the hybrid. No one talks about Loganberry. Sits in a strange gap in most gardeners' knowledge. People know raspberries. People know blackberries. But the Loganberry, the naturally occurring hybrid of the two, first discovered in California in the 1880s, somehow got left out of the conversation. And that's a genuine shame, because Rubus times Loganobacchus produces 15 to 18 pounds of fruit per plant annually. That yield puts Loganberry ahead of both parents in pure productivity. The berries are longer than either raspberry or blackberry, dark red-purple, intensely flavored with a tartness that's more pronounced than blackberry, but different from raspberry. They make extraordinary jam, extraordinary wine, and an extraordinary curd that tastes like a more complex version of lemon curd. Loganberry grows with the same vigor as its bramble parents. It wants to spread. It wants to climb. It responds to a trellis beautifully. It's not hard to grow. It just needs direction, the way any enthusiastic plant does. The reason Loganberry disappeared from common cultivation is simple. It doesn't ship well. The berries are soft and fragile, unsuited to commercial harvest and transport, so the grocery store never sold them. Home growers stopped growing them, and the knowledge faded. But for the home garden, where fruit goes straight from the bush to the kitchen, that softness is irrelevant. What matters is the flavor and the yield, and Loganberry delivers both. It's the fruit the commercial world abandoned, but the home garden can reclaim. Number 12, Gooseberry, the soil-building feast. Now, if you're finding this valuable and starting to realize how much productive potential has been hiding in bushes that most people walk right past, do me a huge favor right now. Hit that like button. It helps this video reach other growers who are ready to stop waiting on fruit trees and start harvesting in year 2. And if you haven't subscribed to Homestead Roots yet, click that subscribe button and ring the bell. We're building a community of real producers here, and I'd love to have you in it. All right, Gooseberry. Elaeagnus multiflora is doing something almost no other fruit plant does. It's improving your soil while it feeds you. Goumi is a nitrogen-fixing shrub, meaning its roots form a partnership with bacteria that pull nitrogen from the air and deposit it in the soil. Growing Goumi in your garden or food forest is like adding a constant, slow-release fertilizer application for free, while the plant simultaneously produces heavy crops of small, tart red berries. A mature Goumi bush produces significant yields of berries by mid to late spring, earlier than almost any other berry crop except honeyberry. The berries are silver speckled and bright red when ripe, tart and slightly astringent, but genuinely pleasant, with a flavor reminiscent of a tart cherry crossed with something more exotic. The traditional use of Goumi stretches across China, Japan, and Korea, where it's eaten fresh, made into juice and jam, and valued both as food and medicine. The berries are rich in lycopene, the antioxidant more commonly associated with tomatoes, as well as flavonoids and essential fatty acids. Here's the permaculture value that makes Goumi exceptional. Plant it near heavy feeders like fruit trees or vegetable beds, and watch everything around it thrive. It's not just producing food, it's building the soil ecosystem that makes all your other plants more productive. Goumi got forgotten in Western gardens simply because it came from Asia, and nobody introduced it to mainstream horticulture. But any serious food grower who discovers it becomes an immediate convert. Think of it as the shrub that feeds your family and fertilizes your garden at the same time. Number 13, sea buckthorn, the vitamin fortress. Sea buckthorn appears elsewhere in our plant knowledge videos for its medicinal properties, and those are real and remarkable. But let's talk about what sea buckthorn does as a food producer, because the productivity numbers are something special. Hippophae rhamnoids produces such dense clusters of orange berries along every branch that by harvest time, the stems disappear entirely under fruit. You don't see branches. You see solid orange. A mature sea buckthorn shrub can produce 20 pounds of berries, or more per season, and those berries are among the most nutritionally dense fruits on Earth. The berries contain vitamin C at levels that dwarf oranges. They're extraordinarily rich in vitamins A, E, and K. They contain rare omega-7 fatty acids found in almost no other plant food. The juice is intensely orange, intensely tart, and intensely nutritious. Even a small amount mixed into juice or smoothies delivers a remarkable nutritional hit. Sea buckthorn grows in harsh conditions that would kill most fruit plants. Poor soil, drought, coastal salt spray, extreme cold. It was the plant that Russian cosmonauts used to protect against radiation damage because of its extraordinary antioxidant profile. It's the plant that Tibetan and Siberian traditional medicine has relied on for centuries. For the productive garden, sea buckthorn has one management consideration. Most varieties require a male plant to pollinate the female berries. One male can pollinate several females. Plant 3 females for every male, and you have a productive grove. Sea buckthorn got forgotten in Western food production, simply because the berries are too tart to eat fresh, and the thorns make harvesting challenging. But the juice, the oil, and the dried berry powder are showing up in health food stores everywhere right now at premium prices. What the health food market charges for sea buckthorn products, you can produce in your backyard for the cost of a few plants. Think of it as the vitamin supplement that grows on a shrub. Number 14, serviceberry, Saskatoonberry. The native powerhouse, serviceberry, also called Saskatoon, Juneberry, or shadbush, depending on where you are, is one of North America's great underutilized food plants. Amelanchier alnifolia has been a food staple for indigenous communities across the continent for thousands of years. It's grown commercially in Canada for the jam and dried berry market, and it produces extraordinary yields from an extremely adaptable, beautiful shrub. A mature serviceberry produces 10 to 15 pounds of fruit per season. The berries ripen in June, hence Juneberry, earlier than most other native fruits, and they're sweet and mild with an almond-like undertone that makes them genuinely delightful fresh. They dry beautifully into a raisin-like product that stores for months. They make exceptional jam and pie filling. Indigenous communities across the prairies dried them and incorporated them into pemmican for winter stores. Here's what makes serviceberry exceptional for the productive landscape. It's beautiful in every season. White flowers in early spring, green leaves in summer, red-orange fall color, winter interest from the branch structure, and outstanding wildlife value. Birds absolutely love the berries, which is both a feature and a challenge. Netting helps if you want to keep your harvest. Serviceberry adapts to an extraordinary range of conditions: wet soil, dry soil, clay, alkaline conditions, partial shade. It grows from Zone 2 to Zone 9. It's native, so it fits naturally into local ecosystems, and it needs almost no intervention once established. Serviceberry got overlooked by most Western food gardeners, simply because it's not European. The European fruit-growing tradition that shaped American horticulture didn't include it. But ask any forager, any permaculture designer, or any Canadian homesteader. Serviceberry is one of the finest food shrubs that exists. Think of it as the native fruit that's been feeding this continent for 10,000 years and is only now getting the recognition it deserves. Number 15, Nanking cherry, the shrub that outproduces trees. Nanking cherry is the argument you make to everyone who says you need a full-size cherry tree to get a real cherry harvest. Prunus tomentosa proves them wrong, definitively. This shrub cherry grows 4 to 8 feet tall and wide, easily managed, easily harvested, fitting in spaces where a standard cherry tree would be absurd, and it covers itself in small, bright red cherries every June, with a generosity that makes actual cherry trees seem lazy. A mature Nanking cherry in full production is so loaded with fruit that the branches bend under the weight. The cherries are small, about the size of a large pea, but they taste like the best cherry you've ever had. Concentrated and bright. Sweet tart with genuine cherry depth. They're wonderful fresh off the bush. Excellent for jam and cherry juice. And traditional in Chinese cooking, where the plant originated. Nanking cherry is also extraordinarily cold hardy to Zone 2, making it one of the best fruit-producing shrubs available for northern gardens, where even hardy apple varieties struggle. It blooms early, and the flowers are beautiful, covering the bare branches in pink and white before the leaves appear. Here's the practical advantage. A single Nanking cherry needs only another Nanking cherry nearby for pollination. Plant 2 or 3, and you have a small grove of heavily producing shrubs in the space of one standard cherry tree. The yields are comparable or superior. The management is far simpler, and the harvest starts years earlier. Nanking cherry got overlooked simply because it's small. We've been trained to think that bigger plants mean more food. Nanking cherry is the counter-argument. It's the shrub that packs cherry tree production into shrub-sized space and starts delivering it 3 years sooner. Think of it as a cherry tree that went on a diet, got more efficient, and doubled its output. Number 16, salmonberry, the wild Pacific treasure. Salmonberry is a Pacific Northwest native that produces prolifically in exactly the conditions most fruit plants hate: wet, shady, cool, and acidic. Rubus spectabilis is the shrub that colors coastal forests orange and yellow-red every July, and it's one of the most productive wild berry plants in North America. The berries look like golden or deep red raspberries, sweet and mild with a gentle flavor that lacks the tartness of raspberry. They're beloved by local wildlife and by foragers who know where to look. A productive salmonberry thicket yields extraordinary quantities of fruit for almost no effort, because salmonberry wants to grow. In the right conditions, it spreads enthusiastically, filling wet spots and shady margins that would otherwise produce nothing. For the Pacific Northwest homesteader, salmonberry fills the gap that most fruit plants can't. It grows where blueberries struggle without amendment, where raspberries won't fruit in the shade, where most fruit plants give up. It's the food producer for the difficult corners of the property. Salmonberry got overlooked as a garden plant because it's considered wild. Nobody marketed it. Nobody bred improved varieties for commercial production. But in the right conditions, moist, cool, partial shade, it outproduces almost everything else you could plant. Think of it as the plant that turns your problem spots into the most productive corners of your property. Number 17, Lingonberry, the Scandinavian secret. Lingonberry is the plant that Sweden built an entire food culture around. Vaccinium vitis idea is one of the foundational flavors of Scandinavian cuisine. The tart jam served with meatballs, the sauce alongside game, the preserve that carries the flavor of summer forest floors through the dark winter months. And it produces from a plant so small, most people would mistake it for a ground cover. Lingonberry grows 6 to 18 inches tall, spreading slowly into a dense carpet of small, glossy evergreen leaves dotted twice a year, spring and fall, with clusters of deep red berries. The low height means it fits under taller shrubs, covers steep slopes, lines pathways, and fills spaces that would otherwise be wasted. In the right conditions, it becomes a living, producing mulch beneath your taller food plants. The berries are tart and intensely flavored. They need cooking or preserving with sugar to be at their best, but cooked into jam or sauce, they're extraordinary. Lingonberry jam has a tartness and complexity that makes simple strawberry jam taste one-dimensional by comparison. Lingonberry needs acidic soil, the same conditions as blueberry, and it's cold-hardy to zone 3. It grows slowly and patiently, building a productive colony over years. It doesn't produce enormous per-plant yields, but when grown as a ground cover across a significant area, total production can be substantial. Lingonberry got overlooked in American food gardening simply because it's not American, but IKEA put it on dining tables across the country and introduced millions of people to the flavor. The next step is growing it yourself. Think of it as the ground cover that earns its keep every single season. Number 18, Barberry, the edible hedge with ancient roots. Most people know barberry as a thorny ornamental hedge shrub with bright yellow or purple foliage. What almost nobody knows is that those thorny branches load up with small, tart red berries every fall that have been a food and medicine staple across the Middle East, Europe, and Asia for thousands of years. Berberis vulgaris produces berries that are intensely tart. Think of a sour cherry crossed with a cranberry, and they're used across Persian, Central Asian, and Moroccan cooking to add brightness and acidity to rice dishes, stews, and meat preparations. The Persian rice dish Zeresh polo is famous specifically for its barberry sour notes. The berries are also dried and used as a spice, and they make a beautifully colored jam or jelly with a flavor unlike anything else. We covered barberry's medicinal properties in our Healing Plants video, the berberine alkaloids with antimicrobial and metabolic effects. But as a food plant, barberry is equally interesting. It produces reliable crops of berries from a shrub that requires essentially no care, and doubles as security hedge for property edges or garden borders. The yield isn't the massive pounds per plant figures of some of our other shrubs, but barberry earns its place by occupying spaces where nothing else goes and producing food and medicine from there. Steep banks, property lines, exposed windswept spots. Barberry handles them all. Barberry got forgotten as a food plant in the West because we classified it as an ornamental and stopped thinking about eating it. but the same shrub that landscape architects spec for parking lot borders has been feeding Middle Eastern communities for millennia. Think of it as the hedge that pays you back. Number 19. Highbush cranberry, Viburnum eduale. The tart abundance. Highbush cranberry is one of the great naming confusions in the plant world. It's not actually a cranberry, it's a viburnum. But Viburnum eduale produces clusters of brilliant red berries, so similar in appearance, flavor, and culinary use to true cranberries that the name stuck everywhere it grows in the northern reaches of North America and across northern Europe and Asia. The production is remarkable. A mature highbush cranberry fills itself with such dense clusters of red berries in late summer and fall that the loaded branches make a spectacular display. The berries hang through the first frosts and actually improve after freezing. The cold breaks down some of the astringency and intensifies the flavor, making late-season harvest preferable to early. The berries are tart to the point of being almost inedible raw, like a true cranberry, but cooked with sugar into sauce, jelly, or jam. They're extraordinary. The flavor has the tartness of cranberry, with a slightly musky, savory undertone that makes it more complex. Highbush cranberry sauce alongside roasted meats is one of those flavor combinations that once you try it, you can't imagine the meal without it. Highbush cranberry is cold hardy to zone 2, tolerates wet soil and partial shade, and grows as a large ornamental shrub that adds four-season interest. Flowers in spring, berries in summer, brilliant red fall color, and winter birds feeding on the persistent fruits. Highbush cranberry got overlooked simply because most people north of Zone 5 don't know it exists, and most people south of Zone 5 can't grow it effectively. But for northern growers looking for an abundant tart berry that requires no care and tolerates every harsh condition their climate dishes out, this is the plant. Think of it as cranberry sauce that grows itself. Number 20. Chilean wineberry, maqui berry, the antioxidant crown jewel. And here we are at number 20, the one I saved for last, because it represents the cutting edge of what backyard food growing can offer. Meet Aristotelia chilensis, the maqui berry, the Chilean wineberry, the shrub that scientists are calling one of the most antioxidant-dense foods ever measured. And it grows in backyards. Maqui berry comes from the temperate rainforests of southern Chile and Argentina, where the Mapuche people have used it as food and medicine for centuries. The berries are small and dark purple-black, clustered in grape-like sprays, intensely flavored with a rich, wine-like depth that gives the plant its other name, wineberry. They're eaten fresh, made into juice and wine, and dried into a powder that's showing up in high-end health supplements at extraordinary prices. Here's the science that's getting researchers excited. Maqui berries score at the very top of every antioxidant measurement system, ORAC values. Anthocyanin content, polyphenol profile. Studies show potential benefits for blood sugar regulation, inflammatory markers, and cardiovascular health. The Mapuche warriors who consumed large amounts of maqui juice before battle believed it gave them strength and endurance. And the modern sports nutrition research suggests there was something to that belief. The shrub itself grows vigorously in mild, temperate climates, producing abundantly once established. It's hardy to around Zone 8, not suitable for the coldest northern gardens, but perfect for the Pacific Northwest, coastal California, the Southeast, and similar mild climates. In the right conditions, it grows quickly and produces heavy crops of berries that the health food market is currently desperate for. Maqui got overlooked in North American gardens simply because nobody outside South America knew it existed until recently. The health food industry discovered the berry before the gardening industry discovered the plant. But you don't have to pay health food store prices for maqui powder when you can grow the shrub yourself. Here's what makes this the perfect ending to our list. Maqui shows that the most advanced nutritional science in the world keeps arriving at the same conclusion that traditional communities reached centuries ago. The most powerful foods sometimes come on small shrubs in out-of-the-way places, waiting for the rest of the world to catch up. Think of it as the superfood that grows in your backyard, while the health food store charges $40 for an ounce of its dried powder. If you got to the end of this video and your list of plants to grow just got longer instead of shorter, that's exactly the right reaction. Every one of these shrubs is available. Everyone is growable by an ordinary person with an ordinary garden. and everyone produces more food per square foot for more years with less effort than the fruit trees that most people default to when they think about growing food. These plants fed families through hard times. They built cuisines and cultures. They kept communities nourished through winters that would have been impossible without them. And they're all still there, still producing, still waiting for growers who are ready to give them space. Smash that like button if you learned something today. Drop a comment and tell me which of these bushes you're planting first. Are you team early spring producers, Honeyberry and Goumi, team high yield champions, black currant and Jostaberry, or team superfruit, maqui and sea buckthorn? I read every comment and I want to know. And if you haven't subscribed to Homestead Roots yet, what are you waiting for? Click that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss a video, because we're just getting started.